All right. Hello. This is Jason Schneiderman, coming to you from the Painted Bride quarterly slush pile podcast. Unfortunately, our intrepid host, Kathy Volkmiller, is dealing with a little bit of a crisis, and so I will be acting in the role of Kathy Volkmiller. Huge shoes to fill and very high heels. But we at Painted Bride Quarterly have a very slow editorial process. It is thoughtful and careful, dare I say, artisanal. And we thought that we should bring it to you so that you can understand why it takes us so long to get back to you when you send us poems. So we're going to have our editorial meeting on the air. I am Jason Schneiderman. I am coming to you from New York, and now the rest of us are going to introduce ourselves. I'll send it over to North Carolina.
Hello, everyone. This is Lisa Zirkle, and I am so glad to be here with all of you folks in this very artisanal process. I do not have high heels on, but I'm very happy to be here to talk poetry with all you folks. And I'm going to send it over to DC.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Nukebauer. I am here in DC, not in the usual library I'm at, but in Georgetown's library today. Just library hopping for a PBQ. And I'm going to send it over to, I think, Brooklyn. Is that right?
Yeah, that's mostly right.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Toby. I am happy to be on the call from Brooklyn. And yeah, I just love talking about poetry. So I'm excited for this editorial meeting. It's gonna be great.
All right, and so let's jump right in. We have two poems from the intrepid Zachary Kluckman. Zachary, thank you for trusting us with your work. And does anybody want to give The Lineated World its first read?
My mic is still on, so, so
Let's do it.
I'll
Toby,
do it.
jump in.
All right. Delineated world. Rain keeps trying to tell me something. Moths dissolve before I learn their language of light. Every dawn, hundreds of bodies fall for another horizon. My sheets disappear into the walls when seen from the floor. Grandmother, when you made your lemon meringues, did you count the times you beat the eggs? Did you ever worry each was a second vanishing into the appetites of age? Were you jealous of the time you surrendered every holiday? Our family tree is a vertical line, a finger pointed up as if rebuking our loud blood, for disturbing the peace between trees, for scaring the fish away from our kitchen table. Uncle once took a man's head with a knife in a bar fight. It was self-defense, but he chose to serve the full sentence because guilt is a worse enemy than time. What integrity I find in his decision. What integrity in the stubborn silence of night blooming jasmine. The corpse plant making us wait a decade to suffer. Its scent of rotten growth. The moths return every night, an endless train of them, numberless as shadows, humble servants of a need they have no tongue to name. Imagine dying. Imagine death as a ballroom full of footprints, left trembling in autumn's breath.
Beautiful. So well done. Gorgeous read. So as Kathy would say if she were here, this is the sound of thinking. This is us as we think about what we want to say about the poem and where it's drawn us in. Um, who wants to start us off? Toby, how did it feel to read it? What was it like in the mouth as a kind of sound
Um,
experience physicalized?
yeah, I enjoyed quite a few sections of like sonic attention. Um, I think they were rebuking our loud blood was a kind of really loud moment that I thought was interesting. Scaring the fish away from our kitchen table. Practically, moving from pretty stable full sentences into the staccato half sentences of the third stanza for disturbing the peace between trees. for scaring the fish away from our kitchen table. Kind of the way that the poem insists on having periods in between those fragments as opposed to, M dashes or colons or something. Really, yeah, really felt like an interesting rhythmic switch in my body. And and yeah, I think one thing reading out loud, the way that the poet wants to use doubling to torque and twist the poem. So what integrity in his decision, what integrity in the stubborn silence of night blooming jasmine, kind of moving from the reflective into the lyrical, and does that again later in the last last stanza break. Imagine death as a ballroom full of footprints. So yeah, I think well, yeah, I definitely noticed a kind of orchestration and very, very close attention to syntactic and like rhythmic changes in the poem.
I'm sort of amazed by that fulcrum in the middle of my uncle once taking a man's head off with a knife in a bar fight. I was like, oh my God, that's a lot of work.
It's so
That's amazing.
memorable.
That's quite an uncle and quite a knife. Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially coming after the fish, like you have this
Yeah.
image of the fish being bludgeoned on the kitchen table or maybe to be prepared for the kitchen table and then to go to the bar fight. This poem kept surprising me in its leaping. I really never knew where it was going to go next, and I found that surprise exciting.
Yeah, I think that in in prose there's so much discussion right now about the shape of narratives and for a narrative poem, it does feel like this isn't following a traditional shape or a lot of shapes that we see in our slush pile where it's kind of leading up to a reveal or there's a reveal like at the start and then we're going to kind of think about it and untangle it. The uncle part feels so memorable to me, but it also feels just kind of part of this larger world. And then what I really like is this kind of allusion to like the Dance of Death or Memento Mori at the end there. I've never actually seen it kind of dramatized that way with footprints, but I love that.
I love the enjambments. I mean, everything really wraps.
Mhm.
The syntax is always wrapped around these line breaks. Our family tree is a vertical line, a finger pointing up as if rebuking our loud blood for disturbing the peace between trees. Yeah, there's this way in which everything feels kind of torqued, and there's this sort of pressure on all of the sentences. I mean, it does open with the moths and end with the moths, but this like the image of the ballroom is kind of amazing. Like, what did you think of the image of the ballroom full of footprints?
I wanted to ask Sam about that. Sam, do you know the Dance of Death to be something in particular, or were you just calling that from this poem?
Oh no, it's something from the Middle Ages. It's this idea that everyone from kind of kings to laborers, from children to saints, et cetera, all of us die, right? Um, and so we're all kind of part of this dance of death, and we should be reminded of this. A couple years ago, the Met was selling tote bags of one of the paintings in their collection, also of Danse Macabre. So for a few years, I was carrying this tote bag around, and what was funny was like a lot of kind of non-literary folks would look at it and say like, "Oh, is that from Halloween?" But it was like May, and I was like, "No, you have to remember death all year."
Great, thank you. Well, clearly that's an allusion in this poem. I'm glad you mentioned that, Sam, because I don't think I would have gotten that without.
I think so. Mhm.
I was thinking of the seventh seal with, the when death is leading the people
Yeah,
across the mountaintop and they're silhouetted against the sky in the kind of dance of death.
absolutely.
I like the absence of actual bodies in the dance. Like this, what you have is the trace, the footprints, or the
Yes.
yeah, kind of like feels like there's a soul illusion in there somewhere where it's
Hmm.
like the footprint is like what the body
Hmm.
left behind or something. Maybe someone that left the body in itself kind of has its own own animation or movement in the final stanza. But yeah, spooky is
Yeah.
one
And
way
the
of
moths too, right? Moths are kind of like footprinty in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
And also the eggs, like that, if
Yeah.
you think of an egg as a possible being, but it's been whipped into a froth, it
Mhm.
also has an evanescent feel to it when it becomes a meringue and vanishes.
I was a little confused by the family tree being a vertical line, but then there being an uncle. I was like, wait, if there's an uncle, then it branches. Then there's no, that's not vertical.
Yeah.
Um, but I like this uncle. I'm like so curious about the full sentence and guilt and time. I mean, I do love the way this kind of keeps coming back to these questions of
Mhm,
time and
mhm.
time passing.
And Jason, do you think that that full sentence refers back to the title, the poem's title, The Lineated World? Because we have some, we have this literary reference, poetic reference in the title, and also in the verticality of the family tree, the vertical line. The lines are going, up and out.
Yeah. And he chose to serve a full sentence, right? Like sentence
Right,
has that double entendre.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's weird, the corpse plant. That was a really unexpected move for me. Like when it got to the corpse plant after the blooming jasmine.
But that's another interesting e- evocation with the night going the move from night blooming jasmine to corpse plant, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing can be seen, but boy, a really different experience in those sense.
Yeah, and the corpse one is usually called a corpse flower, right? Like,
Yes.
the corpse flower is a stinky thing that blooms once a year.
I've never gone to like whenever they announce it at like the botanical gardens, I'm always like, that sounds terrible. I mean, it's like when people are like, "Oh, smell the milk, it's gone off," and you're like, "No, I just want it down the drain."
But
Yeah,
there
like
are
every
always lines, right? Like
Yeah,
people
yes,
line up
yes,
for it.
yes.
it's a
People
big
love
deal.
to go smell a corpse flower. Yeah, I don't know.
What else I just think this poem has going for it, among things said and unsaid, is that I think it will leave readers with the question if they would have made the same choice as the uncle. I know that's
Mm,
not
Yeah.
the main focus of the poem in and of itself, but there's something about it which, you'll ask yourself, and like I think it does invite rereading. Because now as I'm even rereading it, thinking about it, I'm like, this poem, has all these kind of existential layers to it. And like the uncle must think that there's more than like our current state because he's willing, I guess, to give up, like I'm guessing like it's a life sentence, maybe. I don't know.
And this poem has remarkable tactile, sensual details for a poem that is taking on memory, humility, integrity, guilt. If you said to someone, here's a poem about humility and integrity and uses legal language, I don't think you would expect it to have meringue and moths and
Mhm.
ballrooms and floral scents.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it's sort of never I mean it's sort of like I keep expecting a narrative to emerge and it really stays in this very meditative space. Like it really does not it sort of keeps sort of hinting at narrative, but then it really stays in this meditative space that kind of comes back to questions of death and time and really time passing, right? That kind of yeah, that dance of death, I think, is really the thread. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or should we get to voting? We have one more. All right. All right, slushies, we're throwing thumbs. Okay, one, two, three, vote. And it is in. All right. Zachary
yeah.
Kluckman, you are one for one at
Yeah.
this point. We'll have to add like an applause sound effect. Um, and then let's go ahead to,
Woo,
woo,
woo.
to number two. A broken tooth is a whistle. Lisa, do you want to read that one?
Sure, happy to. A broken tooth is a whistle, and in the gap where the enamel is missing, a smile falls through its own shadow. An owl is only wise because the night has hardened it against the moon. What are you willing to surrender for your next meal? When I spent the night plucking the eyes from the scarecrows with a scissor, Mother said, "It's not them you fear, but the potential." The last thing she said before she took up her haunting. I wonder if that's what led me to the bottle. I still see her sometimes in the dark bodies of hawks crossing the highway when I finally abandon the farm for the moon. When I move in with you because you remind me of inertia, you say, "I love you." It's not that I don't believe you, but magic leads to disappearance. How else would we know if it's working? Your voice is like whiskey or an ocean whose name I have forgotten. Each sweeten the nerve where the tooth is missing. Both have tried to kill me more than once. In the mirror, while you search my face for cracks, I practice listening beneath the waves. If you listen hard enough, you lose weight from all the parts that go missing. Everywhere we go, I am at the foot of a lighthouse, but I still hear the corn waving from the past. Sometimes what scares me feels the most like home. Some call this love. 3,000 poems away from you, I still can't explain the silence you catch me holding when no one is looking. When you ask me if I'm listening, my head is full of trees.
Hmm.
And Slushies, while
Okay.
we're thinking, I'll mention that the previous poem was in stanzas, five, 6 line stanzas, and it ended with a couplet. And this one is one big stanza, kind of a fairly long line. So make sure you look at it on the podcast in the show notes so you can see its form.
Yeah, that long line is really important. I'm not sure I can say why. Does anyone want to like talk about like yeah, like there's something really changes when that line gets longer. That
Yeah,
like
I feel like there's a kind of the stretching out allows for a kind of image, a mystical image I feel like I have to work my brain to kind of feel what's rising underneath it or what's happening. Um, I'm at the foot of a lighthouse feels so momentous, and I'm like, why do I feel like there's something momentous happening here? I'm not sure what's going on. My head is full of trees. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of like symbolic weight being attached to language, and I'm not sure where it's gaining that weight from, but I'm often convinced by it. So I'm curious what people think.
well, I really want to know the story behind the knight plucking the eyes from the scarecrows with a scissor. Like that's like I'm like, what? That's not the story? That's just in passing. Like that was amazing.
Is that
And like
something people do?
I don't I mean I was just like I mean I get to plucking the eyes and I'm like, oh my God. And it's like from a scarecrow. Okay, well that's a little better. With a scissor. And then Mother says it's not them you fear, but the potential. And it's like he's doing this because he's terrified of the scarecrow eyes, but then like cutting their eyes out with a scissor is even worse. Um,
Mhm.
wow, like that was amazing. Like I really wanted to stay there, but then it just leads into the mother's death and her ghost. Yeah, that was um
Yeah,
yeah, I want that moment to like just open up.
yeah. And it's and that story is nested into a story that seems like it's about a domestic partnership, right? It's like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
there's maybe a boring domestic partnership happening around that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, because I
the
mean,
you is really interesting here, Jason. I was kind of hoping you would talk to us about that because it
yeah.
seems to shift a little bit. You have the you say I love you, but then later we have if you listen hard enough, you lose weight from all the parts, which um I know you're an expert on the you, Jason.
Yes. Yes, I did write an essay called Ambiguities of the Second Person in English Language Poetry and Fiction. But yeah, no, it's really interesting that the you feels very stable um, in the middle of the poem, when I move in with you because you remind me of inertia, you say, I love you. And it definitely feels like a partner, a lover. And then it says, how else would we know if it's working? Um, but then, yeah, like these other moments where it does feel like it might be a general you, but I think it stays pretty specifically with the beloved. And so we do have this kind of sense of overhearing that the poem isn't quite addressed to us, that we're in the presence of someone speaking to someone else, and there's a sort of fourth wall that descends where we're kind of observing a monologue addressed to someone without being the person to whom it's addressed. And I was fascinated by that inertia. Because inertia, I mean, we tend to think of inertia as stillness, right? That a body at rest tends to stay at rest, and a body in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted on by an outside force. And it's interesting because like this you seems to also be the outside force. Um, and yeah, like
Mm,
we think of it as stillness, right? When we talk about, the inertia, we're talking about, like we're stuck, we feel still, but it could also be motion. It could also be staying staying at the same rate, but then it's also kind of the outside force. And then how did the tooth get lost? How did we lose the tooth? Like, was that acted on by an outside force? Did it
mm,
rot and then get pulled? Did it like yeah, and it's weird because it's like the gap where the enamel is missing. Um I don't know. I'm fascinated by this broken tooth. I want to know more about the tooth because it says where the tooth is missing. And then earlier it says where the enamel is missing. And I'm not really sure if it's a broken tooth or a missing tooth. Like it seems
mhm.
to be both at different times.
Well, and in the title's A Broken Tooth is a Whistle,
Yeah,
but we'd never get the sound, right?
right.
Are there any sounds in this?
I mean, there are a lot of S's. I mean, it's
Yeah.
possible if you had, because some people would like when I had Invisalign, like I had a very strong lisp because it was hard to talk with this, and I've known plenty of people, like with if your teeth are um giving you a bit of a whistle, that's not that unusual. But
Right.
yeah, there are a lot of S's in the poems, but we never hear it kind of. It doesn't sort of show up in the sound work, I don't think.
Well, we have um still I hear the corn waving, which feels like almost could be synesthesia, right? Like
Yeah.
it feels like something you would see more, but maybe that's something that you hear with a trained ear, like if you grow up on a farm. I feel like there's something here, and I could be projecting, kind of like Jason said about the last one, like looking for narrative, but there's something here definitely about mobility. And I think leaving home and then potentially meeting someone. But the poem is interesting because it feels like it's actually sort of like circling a narrative rather than ever kind of getting to the heart of it,
Mhm,
which I think feels intentional. Um, some of this stuff about the tooth, though, does not feel intentional to me, like the
mhm,
brokenness and not brokenness. Like I don't really, I don't know if that is quite working for me.
mhm,
I was There's this moment, your voice is like whiskey or an ocean whose name I've forgotten. Each sweeten the nerve where the tooth is missing. Both have tried to kill me more than once. And I was like, oh, the whiskey and the ocean have tried to kill the speaker. But the first time I read it, I was like, oh, your voice has tried to kill me. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. But there was like just a moment where there's like a lot going on syntactically with subordination. And then finally, but I get it that the whiskey and the ocean have both tried to kill the speaker. But I did have a moment where I was like, wait, the beloved's voice has tried to kill you more than once?
Yeah, I feel like in the first poem, the leaps were interesting and intriguing and kind of led one to another, like the fish to the uncle chopping the head and the night blooming jasmine continuing on to the corpse flower. Here, I'm not quite sure that's the case. It seems more that it's leaping, 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 but that the leaps are not building on one another
Yeah.
for
I
me.
think the other way I was thinking of it, Lisa, and I think maybe we're having the same thought, is it almost has a fever dreamish quality, but not a fever dreamish pacing. Like this poem is kind of slow to read, but the images are stacked like it should be fast, like a fever dream.
Hmm.
That's a really good observation.
Yeah.
Yes, Sam, when you were saying that, I was nodding, forgetting that I'm on a podcast and no
Yeah.
one can see me nodding.
Mhm.
So yes, I agree.
I appreciate your silent nod.
And I wonder if it also loses that kind of the intention of the first poem having those rapt line breaks that Jason mentioned. It did kind of give the sentence energy. And I feel like maybe these sentences stretching out and not necessarily having as much, yeah, as much tension in the sentence and as much pressure on where the line ends could also be, losing some of the sense of like both momentum and intention that drove the images in the first poem.
What do you think about that final image? My head is full of trees. When you ask if I'm listening, my head is full of trees.
I heard it as like the wind in the trees was like kind of intervening where sound should have been, where he should have been hearing the partner's voice. He was just instead hearing like the forest. But that's I guess my personal take on it. I'm curious what other people thought.
I love this, and it reminded me of one of my favorite poems, The Art of Disappearing, by Naomi Shihab. There's a line in that is like, when someone recognizes you at a grocery store, like nod, I think like a cabbage. And then later on, she says, walk around feeling like a leaf, knowing you could tumble at any second. And there's another line after that that I forget. But I love that idea, the head full of trees. I think it's wonderful.
I also really love that, Toby, and I think it's interesting because that line is so short. So Slushy's that the final line of the poem is about half of the length of the rest of the lines of the poem, and it just lands for me. I think it's a really powerful final image, and I kind of want the rest of the poem to be the lines to be that short. I think it does do something with the pacing and giving you a moment to have the image register.
I mean, I do love the image as kind of one of distraction, and then also like the tension with the beloved that this has been so much of that the beloved is frustrated that the speaker seems so distracted, right? It's this poem that's all directed in this attention towards this other person who that is frustrated that the speaker is elsewhere. I thought that was really I really liked those tensions. And yeah, my head is full of trees, right? And we have this like perfect iambic ending. My head is full of trees. Anything else you want to talk about? Any ghost mom or
Mhm.
uh
Yeah. I do love the lyric clarity of the mother as the dark bodies of hawks crossing the highway. That's like,
yeah,
yeah, magisterial.
yeah. Did you like the foot of the lighthouse? Yeah, I wasn't sure about the owl. I was like, the owl is only wise because the night is hard. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But I do like that lighthouse.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I don't know if I think that wisdom is essentially um, contingent upon hardness or a hardening of oneself.
Yeah,
I might even think it's the opposite, actually.
yeah.
Hmm.
I still want to know more about those scarecrow eyes.
Yeah,
I just want to know. I want to
that's
know
an
more about those
interesting
scarecrow eyes.
full separate poem. That could be a whole
Yeah.
whole thing.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna ask. We're gonna Zachary. We're suggesting we want to title the next collection "Plucking the Eyes from the Scarecrows." That's that is our suggestion for the
Also,
next manuscript title.
It would get
Um,
attention.
yes, yes.
is
We're like I don't want to imagine the book cover, but Yeah, just tell them not to, nothing illustrative, nothing illustrative. We want to go for something abstract. But yeah. Oh my God, plucking the eyes from the scarecrows. Plucking the eyes from the scarecrows. That's totally that's dactylic, right? Plucking the eyes from the scarecrows.
Mhm.
Yeah. Nice. All right, should we throw thumbs? Are we are we at thumbs? All
Let's
right.
do it.
Let's try
All
it.
right, team. One, two, three, vote. And it
Oh
is not
no.
in. All right. I am sorry, Zachary Kluckman. You are 1 for 2, which is a fantastic
Hmm.
score when it comes to Slush Pile.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for trusting us with these pieces. And I hope that we did. Uh, I hope that your trust was rewarded and that our conversation was productive and useful and insightful. And does anyone have any announcements? Anyone have anything coming up that they need to advertise or promote or I'm reading in book culture, but it's April 7th. It's two by the time you listen to this, it will already have happened.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, we loved talking about your poem, Zachary, and really fascinating discussion. And we really thank you for sharing your work with us and the whole Slush Pile crew.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. And slushies, stay tuned. We'll be back and keep reading.
Woo.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Hi, Slushy.
Oh, so
Bye, Slushy.
Bye,
efficient.
slushies.